My name is Delcy and I'm 26 years old. At my wedding, right between the clinking glasses and the fake smiles, Grandpa pressed something small and worn into my hand, and before I could even open it properly, my father's voice cut through the room, loud enough to freeze the band mid-note. At my wedding, Grandpa gave me an old passbook. Dad threw it in the ice. Trash belongs with trash. Oh, those exact words, sharp as broken glass, echoing while everyone stared as he snatched the brittle little book from my fingers and tossed it into the champagne ice bucket like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. And my heart dropped so fast I felt it in my knees because that passbook wasn't just paper to me. It was Grandpa's hands shaking when he gave it, his eyes glossy with something unsaid. And I remember thinking how strange it was that my own father could look so proud while humiliating his own dad in front of 200 guests, my veil suddenly feeling heavy, my dress too tight to breathe, and Grandpa just standing there, shoulders slumped, pretending he didn't see the laughter ripple through my dad's side of the family, the same family that always said Grandpa was old-fashioned, broke, irrelevant, like love has an expiration date. I bent down, ignoring the whispers, plunged my hand into freezing ice, my fingers stinging as I pulled the soggy passbook out. Pages warped, ink faded, and Dad scoffed again, repeating it louder. "This passbook is trash." As if saying it twice would make it true. And something in me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just a clean, quiet break where obedience used to live, because this was my wedding and somehow it had turned into another stage for him to prove power. So I walked out, heels in hand, mascara blurring, Grandpa calling my name softly behind me, and I didn't stop until the night air burned. My lungs and the valet stared, like he wasn't sure if he should help or hide. In the car, I opened the passbook properly for the first time, recognizing Grandpa's handwriting on the inside cover, a date from before I was born, a bank name I hadn't heard in years, and balance pages stamped so long ago the ink had turned a ghostly blue. And as I drove, memories poured in uninvited, Grandpa teaching me how to count coins at the kitchen table. Grandpa telling me quietly that money was just stored effort, not status, Grandpa once saying, "One day they'll understand." And I realized Dad never understood anything that didn't shine, didn't brag, didn't bend the room to his will. The bank was still open, lights humming like a held breath, and I went in wearing my wedding dress, damp passbook clutched like proof of something fragile but real, the teller glancing up with a polite smile. That slowly faded as she flipped through the pages, her fingers slowing, her posture changing, and she disappeared without a word, leaving me standing there while my phone buzzed with missed calls from the reception, my mother's texts alternating between "come back and don't embarrass us," and when the manager came out, his face was pale in a way that made my stomach twist because suddenly the room felt too quiet, too careful, and that's when I remembered the line from the thumbnail like a prophecy. "I went to the bank anyway." The teller went pale. "Ma'am, do not leave," because he said it almost exactly like that, asking me to sit, to please wait, to keep the passbook on the counter, his voice low and urgent, and as he explained in measured tones that this account had been accruing interest for decades, that it had special conditions no longer offered, that it was linked to assets I didn't even understand yet. I felt a heat rise behind my eyes, not joy, not greed, but grief mixed with vindication, because Grandpa had been carrying this quietly all along while Dad built his kingdom on noise and contempt. And I thought about how easily people call something trash when they don't recognize its weight, how families teach you who you're allowed to be small in front of, and how tonight was supposed to be about love but became a reckoning instead. And while the manager kept talking, I pictured Dad's hand flicking the passbook into ice, his laughter, his certainty, and for the first time I wasn't scared of him finding out the truth. I was almost curious to see what would happen when the story he told himself finally collapsed under the one. Grandpa had been writing in silence all these years. The manager closed the office door softly behind us and asked me to breathe. Actually told me to slow down, because what I was holding wasn't just an old passbook. And as he spoke, every sentence felt like another crack forming in the version of my family I had been raised to believe in. Because Grandpa hadn't been poor or foolish or outdated, he had been patient. Deliberate, quietly strategic. The kind of man who planted trees knowing someone else would enjoy the shade. And when the manager finally said the number out loud, I felt dizzy. Not because of the money itself, but because of the years behind it. Decades of discipline, reinvestments, land-linked certificates, and conditions that only triggered if the account holder passed it willingly to a direct descendant, which explained Grandpa's trembling hands at the wedding, his urgency, his eyes searching mine as if to make sure I would take it seriously, and suddenly the words from earlier replayed in my head like a curse. This passbook is trash, and I wondered how many times in life we throw away miracles because they don't arrive wrapped in arrogance. The manager asked if I wanted to make a call, and the first person I thought of wasn't my husband, wasn't my mother, it was Grandpa. So I stepped outside, wedding dress brushing against the cold tile, and when he answered, his voice was careful, like he was bracing for disappointment. And all I could say was, Grandpa. I went to the bank, and there was a pause so long I thought the call dropped. Then a quiet exhale, almost a laugh, and he said, So, they told you. And something in that broke me open, because I realized he never planned to prove anyone wrong. He only wanted to protect me from the way our family weaponized money to control people. When I went back inside, the manager explained the next steps, the legal transfers, the safeguards, and then looked me straight in the eye and said, Ma'am, do not leave this unattended. Not tonight, echoing the line that would later be everywhere. Ma'am, do not leave. And by the time I walked out, the passbook was secured, documented, no longer something anyone could toss into ice with a joke, and my phone lit up again, this time with Dad calling repeatedly, messages shifting from angry to panicked because somehow news travels fast when power senses it might be slipping. I returned to the venue not to apologize, not to explain, but to retrieve Grandpa. And when I walked in, silence spread faster than music. My dress still damp at the hem, my posture steadier than it had ever been. Dad stepping toward me with that familiar smirk already cracking, demanding where I'd been, and I said it calmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. I went to the bank anyway, and the room tilted, because people lean in when confidence replaces chaos. And when I turned to Grandpa and offered my arm, Dad laughed nervously and repeated it one last time. That trash? And that's when I looked him in the eye and replied, You threw away Grandpa's gift. Not mine. And for the first time in my life, he didn't have a comeback. Later, away from the noise, Grandpa told me the truth he had never said out loud, about how he'd built everything after losing his own parents young, how he watched my father grow bitter, entitled, how he waited for the right moment to pass something on without turning it into a weapon. And I understood then that the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson. Silence can be strength. Humility can outlast cruelty, and not everything valuable needs to announce itself. Weeks later, after lawyers and paperwork, and a lot of family tension that finally loosened its grip on me, I moved Grandpa into a place near us, somewhere warm and bright. And the day Dad tried to reconnect, suddenly respectful, suddenly curious, I didn't gloat, didn't explain. I just smiled politely and let the distance speak for me, because some people only learn when the story moves on without them. If this story hit you in the chest, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or watched someone you love be called worthless because their value wasn't loud enough, then stay with this channel, because these aren't just stories about revenge. They're about quiet wins, long games, and the kind of justice that doesn't shout but lasts. So if you believe that patience beats cruelty and truth always catches up, make sure you subscribe and walk with us into the next story.